Hi guys, so I recently heard about this thing called Booktube, and from what I can gather, I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me. But from what I can gather, it's just pretty much making videos about books and talking about books on YouTube. So I thought I would jump into the Booktube community. I've been a reader for a really long time. I've always loved reading, and I do still read a lot, especially more so now that I've changed jobs and I've devoted more time to reading. I do kind of review the books I'm reading on Goodreads, but I've always wanted to share them more with you guys, even if they're maybe not necessarily your taste. I don't know. But I've also wanted to share them with our viewers in the YouTube community. And I do sometimes do reviews on different books I'm reading, but it's only if they're part of our book club or if they were things I thought you would be interested in. But I would like to discuss everything I'm reading right now and other thoughts on books. So to kick off my big foray into BookTube, I thought I would share the books that I read in July with you guys. There was Inside the Dream Palace, The Glass Castle, and Winter People. Inside the Dream Palace is a book about the history of the Chelsea Hotel in New York City, and from the beginning to the end and all the stuff in between. And I actually did not finish this book. I have a couple rules for myself when it comes to reading, and I try to get at least 2 books out from the library when I go, because in case one sucks, I have a backup. And I'm glad I had my second book this time, which I think was The Glass Castle, because I did not like Inside the Dream Palace. One of my other rules for reading is that I try to not give up on books unless I really cannot get through them. But there are exceptions sometimes. See also my foray into Jane Austen. But this book I wasn't going to try to torture myself to get through, because by page 40 I was already bored to tears with it. Inside the Dream Palace for me was just tedious. It kept going off on information that wasn't really that important into details that really wasn't that important. And I feel like the editor was just like, hey man, do what you want. I'm just gonna sit back and put whatever you write, put it in the book, go to town. And so I got to page 39 and I was done. But it made me sad because the Chelsea Hotel has always been interesting to me, and I wanted to know all the legends and stuff that were going on there. But I need to know about the freaking friends of the builder who started the construction of it and the land around. Just too many details. The Glass Castle. The Glass Castle I actually really liked. And it's still something that kind of sticks with me. The Glass Castle is about Jeanette Walls. She's a gossip columnist and journalist for MSNBC.com, or she used to be. But it talks about her childhood, growing up with a father who was an alcoholic and couldn't hold down any jobs, and her mom, who was just kind of along for the ride, but they were pretty much nomadic. They had a really, really impoverished childhood. Didn't have a refrigerator in their house and didn't know what central air was. Kind of impoverished. And some of the things in that book are just so horrifying and hard to imagine them actually happening to somebody. And so it was really good. It was well written, and I liked that. Usually, I know Leslie, you have this problem. I usually can't stand when an author starts talking about their early childhood and goes all the way up. The very first thing she writes about in the book is she's her first memory when she's 3, and it goes up from there. It's not boring because the things that happen are just so terrible and interesting, and so it keeps you engaged. It was interesting because even though in the beginning you can kind of feel that she accepts that this is the life she leads, it's not abnormal to her, it just is what it is, and she doesn't have any feelings toward it, and just kind of tells you this is what happened. Oh, my dad, we were going down the road and my dad threw my cat out of the car because he said it didn't want to be in the car anymore because it was crying and scratching everybody because it wanted to get out, so he just threw it out of the car. Doesn't say she's upset or anything. And then as she gets older and realizes hey, our situation's pretty fucked, she starts writing about more of the emotions she was experiencing around the time. The last book I read in July was Winter People. I'm not normally a fan of mystery books or suspense books, and this wasn't really a mystery book. It was more of a book about suspense, but I really enjoyed it. Winter People is about this crazy town where people keep disappearing. Half of the perspective is told from the diary of this woman who grew up with a lady who was a witch and taught her about, hey, you can raise people back from the dead if you want, and they're called sleepers. And this woman who wrote the diary named Sarah, and she goes through a bunch of tragedies in her life herself, and ends up bringing a sleeper to life or back to life. And then the other half is told in present day, and it's a couple different stories in one. It's about the daughter of this family that's living in the house that Sarah used to own, and her mom disappears, and so she's trying to find her. And then a lady whose husband went to that same town, and then he ended up dying in a car accident, but she didn't know why he was in that town, and so she's trying to figure out why he was there. And all the stories kind of like tie in together. A little bit loosely, but it was still pretty good. And I like the supernatural element to it. I think that's what I like most about the book. And then it was pretty good about the suspense. Like, I didn't know where the twists and turns were going to lead. Usually I'm pretty good about figuring stuff out ahead of time with books or movies, like what the plot twist is going to be, but this one I couldn't figure it out exactly. At the end of July, I did start reading the book Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer, but I don't count that as a book I read in July because I started reading in July, but I just finished it, unfortunately today, which is the 2nd. So I'm just going to do a whole separate review about that, especially because I don't know how I feel about it. I hope you enjoyed my first Booktube video, and I have more coming up. They're not on any kind of regular schedule or anything. It's just as I read books and finish books and think thoughts about books, I'll post stuff. So, love you guys. Bye.